My name is James, and today I'm going to tell you about the day I had a relationship with my stepfather. Subscribe to the channel now and stay until the end so you don't miss any details. Summer vacation in Florida had finally arrived, and I was looking forward to spending a few days relaxing after an intense semester at university. My mother and stepfather's beach house was in a small coastal town, a quiet place with beaches that seemed to stretch for miles. Every year, this time was an escape from everything: studies, routine, commitments. But this time, there was something different in the air, and maybe I knew why. My stepfather, Michael, had always been a steady, silent presence in my life. At 45, he was tall, athletic, with slightly graying hair that contrasted with his serious face. He seemed a distant figure, always respectful, but never too close. And me? Well, I had never felt anything for a man, let alone thought that something like this could happen. Still, that first night in the house, I realized that something was beginning to change. It was late afternoon, and the sun was setting over the sea, tinging the sky orange and pink. The house was lit only by the natural light coming in through the large living room windows, and Michael was organizing some things in the kitchen while my mother was on the phone. She was leaving that evening to visit a friend in the city, and I found myself alone with him, which was unusual, but at the same time, unexpectedly comfortable. "Do you like fishing, James?" he asked casually, taking a beer out of the fridge and offering me one. I laughed, accepting the drink. "I've never been much of a fan, but I think it might be interesting." He smiled slightly, which seemed rare. "We can go early tomorrow if you like. There's a place around here where there's always good fish." I nodded, a little surprised by the invitation. It was rare that he suggested we do something together, but the idea sounded good. That evening passed quietly, with scattered conversations about college, my plans for the summer, and a few stories from him, who told more about his work as an engineer. Although the atmosphere was relaxed, there was an inexplicable tension that I couldn't ignore. The next day, we got up early and took the boat to the fishing spot. The sky was clear and the sun had been shining brightly since early morning. On the boat, we sat side by side, chatting casually. At one point, while I was trying to organize the fishing line, I noticed that Michael was watching me in a different way, and my heart raced for no apparent reason. I tried to stay focused on the fishing, but the feeling of being watched made everything more intense. "Is everything all right?" I asked, trying to sound natural. He seemed surprised by the question, but just nodded. "Yes, everything's fine. I was just thinking that you've grown up too fast. Sometimes I still remember when you were younger." "Yeah, time really does pass quickly," I replied, not sure how to react. We got back to the house in the middle of the afternoon, and my mother had left again because she was going to be at work for 24 hours. After a long shower, I went down to the living room and found Michael sitting on the sofa, fiddling with something on his cell phone. He looked at me and motioned for me to join him. "I took the opportunity to order pizza for dinner since your mother isn't back yet," he said. I sat down on the sofa next to him, and we started chatting about movies and series, finding some we liked in common. Little by little, the conversation became more relaxed, and he started telling funny stories about trips he had taken when he was younger. For some reason, I felt relaxed, and the tension of the previous moments began to dissipate. At one point, he got up to get another beer and came back, sitting down closer to me. I noticed that his eyes were fixed on me, but his face maintained a soft expression, almost as if he were evaluating something. The closeness was unexpected, and I felt a different energy between us. For a second, I thought it was all in my head, but he looked away and laughed at something I said, breaking the moment. The tension between us grew, like a thread about to snap, and I couldn't look away from Michael's eyes. It was as if there was an implicit understanding between us, something we had never spoken about, but which now seemed to shout out in silence. I could feel my heart racing, a mixture of anxiety and curiosity. I had never thought about being so close to him, let alone exploring what that might mean. "James," he began, his voice low and hesitant. "You know you can talk to me about anything, right?" "Yes, of course," I replied, trying to hide the trembling in my voice. But what I really wanted to do was ask about the growing energy between us. It was a foolish impulse, but the feeling was so strong that I could hardly resist. "Life is full of surprises," he continued, "and sometimes these surprises can take us to unexpected places." That intrigued me. He spoke so openly, but there was something in his gaze that disarmed me. "What do you mean by that?" I asked, trying to force a clearer conversation. Michael hesitated for a moment, as if weighing up his words. "Life is complex, James. Our experiences shape us in ways we often don't understand, and sometimes we can discover new sides of ourselves when we allow ourselves to explore." I felt my heart speed up even more. It felt like an invitation. A part of me wanted to give up any resistance and dive into that new reality, while another part screamed that I was just putting myself in a strange situation. He was my stepfather, and this shouldn't be how it was shaping up. But when I looked at him again, I noticed that there was a sparkle in his eyes that encouraged me. He leaned a little closer, and the distance between us became smaller and smaller. "James, I don't want you to feel pressured. I'm just trying to be honest." "Honest about what?" I asked, feeling more curious and vulnerable by the second. "About me, about you. Sometimes life gives us opportunities to really get to know each other, and I want you to know that I'm here. If there's anything you feel, anything you want to explore." He paused, seemingly lost in his own words. Adrenaline was coursing through my veins. It was the first time I'd thought of us like that. "Michael, I don't know how to handle it." He smiled, a soft smile that made my heart race even faster. "It's all right. We don't need to rush anything. We can just see where it takes us." With that, the tension in the air changed shape. Instead of fear and confusion, there was a new sense of curiosity and excitement. It was as if we were in a delicate dance, taking steps to one side and the other, without knowing exactly where it would take us. "Can I ask you something?" I said, my voice almost a whisper. "Of course. Have you ever felt anything like this before? Something you can't explain?" He hesitated, reflecting. "Yes. We've all felt at some point something that makes us question ourselves. Life is full of surprises, and it's often difficult to deal with them." The conversation flowed in a way I had never experienced before. The movie in the background seemed forgotten, and the atmosphere around us was charged with anticipation. I wondered if this was really what I wanted, but I couldn't deny the attraction I felt for him. "James," he said, his voice now soft and firm, "I'm not trying to force anything. I just want you to know that it's normal to feel these things. Don't worry about labeling it. Just feel it." Those words echoed in my mind. It wasn't just him who was feeling. I was also attracted to him in a way I never thought possible. Fear turned into vibrant curiosity. And that's when I realized this could be the opportunity to explore a part of me that had always been dormant. "Can I hold you?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. The words came out as a whisper, almost inaudible, but Michael stared at me with an intense gaze that made my heart soar. He nodded slowly, and the simple gesture made my feelings flip. Drawn by the intensity of the moment, I moved closer to him. Our breaths intertwined, and the connection that was once just an idea was now a reality. I was about to cross a line I had never imagined I could cross. Michael didn't pull away. On the contrary, he seemed to relax, allowing me to explore this new territory. A chill ran through my stomach, but there was also an intense warmth that seemed to envelop me. "This is different," he murmured, his voice low and full of meaning. "I know," I replied, my mind spinning with the possibility. I never thought it could happen, but here we are. If you're enjoying this men's story, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. He smiled, and there was a sparkle in his eye that encouraged me. Sometimes the best things in life come from surprises. That conversation, that touch, everything seemed to unfold into a new reality. Michael moved even closer, and when our gazes met again, I could see a mixture of desire and compassion. He wasn't judging me. He was inviting me to find out. "Do you want to continue?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. "Yes," I replied, and as I said this, I realized that I was ready to explore this new connection between us. It was a step into the unknown, but something inside me felt drawn to this new adventure. The night dragged on, but what was a simple movie turned into something much deeper. We were both about to discover not only each other, but also ourselves in ways we could never have imagined. The world around us disappeared, and all that remained was the intensity of the connection that was forming between us. And so, between whispers and meaningful glances, we began to walk a path that until that moment had seemed impossible. But now, as the night progressed, I felt that what was to come would be one of the most intense experiences of my life. The tension of the night felt like a bubble about to burst. I had never felt so alive. The sofa we were sitting on became a sacred space, a refuge where only the two of us existed. The movie was still playing in the background, but the lines and scenes were just distant noises now. What really mattered was Michael's presence, his intense gaze, and the electricity that pulsed between us. "Are you all right?" he asked, with a slight smile on his lips. The concern in his voice made my heart race even faster. "I am," I replied. But in truth, my body was filled with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. I can't believe this is happening. "Sometimes life takes us down unexpected paths," he said, leaning a little closer, his breathing more audible now. "And the beauty of it is that we can discover who we really are." Those words echoed in my mind, making me feel vulnerable, but also incredibly strong. The possibility of exploring this new part of myself was tantalizing. I had never considered that I could feel something like this for a man, especially my stepfather. But now, the idea seemed not only acceptable, but desirable. "Do you think that's wrong?" I asked, a sudden fear rising in my chest. "I mean, we're family." He hesitated, as if carefully considering his words. "The line between family and love can be complicated. What matters is how you feel. And if you're feeling that way, maybe it's something worth exploring." His honesty was refreshing, and I felt a wave of gratitude that he was so open. "I've never been with a man before," I confessed, and my voice came out almost as a whisper. "This is all new to me." "New can be good," he replied, his gaze sure and encouraging. We connected during that moment, and then we did. Our dialogues continued, each one deeper than the last. I was surprised by how naturally the conversation flowed, as if we had been made for each other. I talked about my fears, my insecurities, and he listened attentively, offering comfort and support. It was a safe space where I could be vulnerable without fear of judgment. Over time, our touches became more frequent and natural. His hand brushed against mine and I didn't pull back. Instead, I let that connection deepen, feeling the electricity between us. "It's so easy to talk to you," I said, smiling shyly. "I feel the same," he replied, squeezing my hand lightly. "It's like we're finally opening a door that's been closed for a long time." That made me feel a sense of freedom. Every word we exchanged felt liberating, as if we were peeling away layers of something that was stopping us from being ourselves. I was about to discover a part of myself that had always been hidden. "Have you had relationships with men before?" I asked, curious about his story. "A few," he replied thoughtfully, "but nothing that I considered as significant as what I feel now. I've never been so connected to someone like that." The impact of those words left me speechless. Feeling that we were equally vulnerable made me want to explore it even more. The atmosphere around us seemed charged, as if the air was denser, hotter. "So, what do you think we should do now?" I asked, nervousness beginning to mix with an almost palpable excitement. "We could just stay here and see where it takes us," he suggested, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Or if you'd prefer, we can walk away for a while. Just the two of us." The suggestion of moving away sent a chill through my stomach. I was about to cross a line that would change everything between us. "Come on," I said, almost without thinking. The word came out more like an invitation than a statement. Michael stood up and pulled me away from the sofa, leading me into the small room he used as an office. It was a cozy space, with a desk cluttered with books and a few paintings on the walls. The soft light from the lamp created an intimate atmosphere, perfect for what we were about to explore. As soon as we entered, the atmosphere changed. Michael's proximity left me breathless. He turned to me, and our gazes met again. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice low and soft. "Yes," I replied, and the firmness in my words surprised me. "I want to explore it." He took a step forward, and our bodies moved even closer. My heartbeat echoed in my ears, and I could feel the heat emanating from him. The moment was intense, almost magical, and every second seemed to drag by as we waited for what would come next. And then, as if everything was unfolding in slow motion, he pulled me closer. Our lips touched in a soft kiss, hesitant at first, but quickly intensifying. It was a deep connection, a mixture of desire and vulnerability. The kiss deepened, and the world around us disappeared. The office became a sacred space where the only thing that mattered was the two of us. Doubts and fears dissipated, giving way to an intense passion that I had never experienced before. When we finally parted, our gazes met again, and I could see a mixture of desire and affection on his face. "Wow," I murmured, not knowing how else to describe what had happened. "Wow, indeed," he replied, a satisfied smile on his face. "That was special." I felt like we were at a point of no return, and the idea of where this would lead us was both terrifying and exciting. But I couldn't care about the implications. What I felt for Michael was real, and that was all that mattered at that moment. The last day arrived. I knew it was time to go home, and that made me apprehensive. The connection I had created with Michael was intense, and the thought of leaving him behind made me anxious. That morning, I got ready slowly, trying to absorb every moment. Every piece of clothing I put on seemed to weigh more, as if I were carrying the weight of everything we had lived through together. Breakfast was silent, only the sound of the fork against the plate breaking the silence. Michael was in the living room, looking out of the window, which made me even more nervous. "Are you ready?" he asked, without turning around. His voice was soft, but it carried a sadness that I could feel deep in my heart. "I'm not sure," I replied hesitantly. "I don't want it to end." He turned to me, his eyes full of understanding. "Nothing will end, James. What we have is real. You'll always be with me, even if we're far away from each other." I knew he was right, but the thought of going back to everyday life without him was frightening. Reality was about to swallow me up, and I wasn't sure how to react. After a long silence, I finally got up and walked over to him. "Come on, it's time to go." Those words came out as a whisper, almost as if I was trying to convince myself. I said goodbye to my mother and left. At the train station, the atmosphere was heavy. The sun was shining, but everything seemed colorless. People passed by, each stuck in their own routine, and I felt like I was about to leave an important part of myself behind. When the train arrived, the platform was full, but my focus was on Michael. "James," he said, holding my hand for a moment, "don't forget me." Those words were simple, but they carried a deep meaning. I didn't want to forget him. The connection we had created was unique, and I knew it wouldn't disappear so easily. What would you do if you saw the one you love most with someone else? Leave it in the comments. "How could I?" I replied, my heart beating fast. It was hard to hold back the tears. The moment seemed so intense that I wished time would stop. I wanted to stay there forever, but the reality was undeniable. The train whistled, and the doors opened. I took one last look at Michael, imprinting his image in my mind. He looked so handsome with that melancholy smile, and I knew I would miss him every day. I got on the train and sat by the window, watching as it pulled away. As the train went on its way, the landscape changed rapidly, but my mind was fixed on everything we had experienced. I remembered the laughs, the conversations, and the moments that, until then, had seemed impossible. Each memory made me feel a mixture of joy and sadness. I could hear the conversations around me, but everything seemed distant. I was immersed in my own thoughts, reflecting on what had happened. It was as if I was living a dream, that I didn't want to wake up from. Time passed and the train stops came and went, but I was still stuck with the memory of him. When I got home, the routine awaited me, cold and colorless. The atmosphere was familiar, but everything seemed different. I had changed. Things that had once seemed so important now seemed insignificant. The connection I had created with Michael had changed me in ways I still couldn't understand. Every moment by his side had been so intense that now, as I returned to the routine, everything seemed pale and distant. I did what I was supposed to do, what was expected of me, but my mind was far away, immersed in memories. Every smile and every word I exchanged with the people around me was just a reflection of what had happened during the vacation. It was as if the brightness of my everyday life had faded, dimmed by the light of that magical time I spent with him. Longing was a strong, almost palpable feeling that enveloped me. I knew I couldn't share what I had experienced with Michael with anyone, because they were moments that seemed to have been made just for the two of us, like a secret kept under lock and key. Even so, the memories were vivid and imprinted on my soul. I felt as if a part of him had taken root in me, and that was what made everything so complicated. At night, when the silence took over my room and the stars shone outside, I would lie down and think about everything Michael and I had shared. I remembered his touch, the laughter that echoed between us, and the looks that said more than words could express. The feeling of longing came over me like a tight hug, but at the same time, there was a certain peace. It was as if I knew that, even if we were far from each other, the connection we had created would be a part of me forever. There were days when I found myself smiling alone, remembering how he looked at me, as if I were the only person in the world. It was a look that awakened something inside me, a desire that made me feel alive. And while the world around me continued with its obligations, I was caught up in the sweet memory of a love that blossomed unexpectedly. The warmth of the afternoons we spent together, laughing and sharing secrets, seemed like an echo that refused to go away. It wasn't just a passing infatuation, it was something deeper. There was something about Michael that touched me in a unique way. He showed me parts of myself that I didn't even know existed. With him, I felt free, without judgment. It was as if we were in a world apart, where nothing else mattered. Days turned into hours, and hours faded into eternal moments of happiness. Still, there was a part of me that wondered if this connection would stand the test of time. I longed for more moments with him, for more laughter and touches that warmed my heart. But at the same time, reality was pulling me back. Day-to-day obligations awaited me, and life went on without waiting. I knew I had to move on, but the thought of leaving behind what we had built made me uneasy. The memory of the kiss we shared before we parted was one of my most precious treasures. It was a kiss that spoke of promises and hopes. Every time I closed my eyes, I could feel his lips on mine, as if he were still there by my side. I didn't want to forget that moment, and in a way, I knew I wouldn't be able to. That passion had seeped into my being, and even if I tried, I wouldn't be able to get rid of it. As I lay down, I let the longing take over me. It was a bittersweet feeling, like a wine that left a warm taste in my mouth. I knew there was a future ahead, and who knows, maybe a reunion. And so, with my heart full of memories and hopes, I allowed myself to dream. Michael had become a part of me, and as long as there was this connection, I knew he would never truly be far away. I closed my eyes, immersing myself in the memory of the soft touch of his hands, that warmth that always enveloped me in his embrace. It was as if the world outside had disappeared, and all that existed was the two of us, lost in an instant that seemed eternal. The feeling of being by his side was magical. The laughter, the conversations, and those complicit glances that said more than words could express. I knew that life would continue its relentless journey, but inside me there was a part that would always stay with him, like a shadow that wouldn't fade. Every day as I walked through my routine, I missed him like a physical absence, an emptiness that insisted on accompanying me. I remembered the promises I had made to myself. Whatever happened, I would carry that love and those memories with me, like a talisman that would protect me from the cold and indifferent world. He was my refuge, and at the same time, my greatest challenge. The memory of our time together warmed my heart, even in moments of loneliness, heartbroken but full of hope. I let my dreams take me back to Michael. It was a place where everything seemed possible, where problems dissipated and joy reigned. I imagined us walking together on a deserted beach, with the gentle sound of the waves crashing on the sand. The sky would be painted in warm colors, and I would feel the light breeze caressing our faces. It was a perfect setting, full of promise and desire, a piece of our world that would never cease to exist. Then I saw your smile. It was that smile that made me feel like I was floating. It was as if minutes turned into hours when we were together. In my thoughts, we went back to sharing secrets, laughing at everyday nonsense, and planning a future that seemed to shine before us. Every moment was intense, charged with adrenaline, as if we were living a great adventure. That's how I wanted it to be, an endless cycle of love and happiness. The memories of our nights together also danced in my mind. Every touch, every kiss, brought out a wave of emotion that left me breathless. The intensity with which he made me feel was something I had never experienced before. The chemistry between us was electrifying, and I lost myself in his eyes, discovering a world I hadn't known before. I wanted those moments to be real again, for us to create new memories, new adventures. But for now, all I had was the power of my imagination and the hope that one day our paths would cross again. And so, as the dreams took me back to Michael, I knew that, even at a distance, the love we shared would never die. It would live on inside me, pulsing strongly, giving me the strength to carry on, always dreaming of the possibility of meeting again. That was the story, my loves. What did you think? Leave it in the comments. And if you liked it, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel by activating the notification bell so you don't miss any of the channel's daily videos. See you tomorrow.